Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. Today is Sunday, May the 16th, 2021. And today's open topic is feelings are good servants, but poor masters. And some of the problematics of being in your feelings. And so all of that and more when we return in just a second. Peace, and blessings. We are back. Family, let me get out of there. There we go. We're doing something different here today. And so normally I am streaming live simply on YouTube and Facebook, but I'm also just going to do a live as well on Instagram. So for those of you who are joining on Instagram, know that if I present something on the screen, it will only be shown either if you're on the Facebook or you're on YouTube. And so the StreamYard doesn't stream to Instagram, and which is sad. But I hope they, add that to the list in the near future. So peace and blessings to all of you who have joined. Lynn's Craft says, I thought you could do StreamYard and Facebook simultaneously. Maybe that's just Zoom. No, yeah, on StreamYard, you can do Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. So that's what I'm doing right now. The problem is you can't do it on Instagram. And so that's the dilemma, see here. So I have the phone right here streaming to Instagram, and then I have StreamYard here streaming to YouTube and Facebook, or both the Harold Johnson page and the asarimhotep page. And so I might try to Twitch, because you can do Twitch, on here as well. So thank you for your commentary, and thank all of you who are joining live on the various different platforms. Peace to Infinite Minds, to Zane Montego, to Lotharia Cartwright, to Harold Richardson. Peace and blessings, Brother Dynamic, Omar Reed, Sister Tamika, and Brother Teti Ursa Mahat Ra Sanefuru. Peace and blessings to you. Peace to Mama 74. And everyone else who has joined on Instagram. And so today's topic is an open discussion. So if you want to come in and have a conversation with me, I will put the link in the chat for those of you who are on the YouTube stream, as well as the asarimhotep page. Y'all be able to get the stream. So peace to I Am King Sosa, and peace to Brian Beno Smith. Thank you both for joining and making yourselves known in the chat. So again, today's topic is feelings are good servants, but poor masters. And this is a saying that allegedly was attributed to the ancient Egyptians, but I think that is false. I think Schwaller de Lubitsch is the one who originated that saying in terms of it being attributed to the Egyptians. But there's another individual who coined a similar phrase, and if I could just find it, feelings. There we go. And his name is John Seymour, who makes the observation that he's a neurolinguist. He says emotions make excellent servants, but tyrannical masters. So I think that's the origin of the phrase, not the ancient Egyptians. But it is something that I've come to realize over the years. And this weekend or recently, sometime this past week, it has manifested itself again. So in Houston, Texas, in my hometown, Houston, Texas, there was an incident where these two, I don't know if they're grown or if they're teenage girls, were getting ready to fight, or they were fighting. And so this brother, older gentleman who was an Army veteran, father of three, I think, all he does is try to step in the middle to break up the fight and try to convince them not to fight, right? So when it got a little bit overwhelming, so he stepped out of the way and let them fight and do whatever the girls are doing. So one of the girls was a relative of his cousin, and so the other girl, who was not the cousin, decides they were already streaming it live on TikTok, Instagram, one of these social media platforms, right? And so the girl, who is of course, she's amped and she's heated, and she is on the Instagram live talking about the brother and saying that the man pushed her and did all this other kind of stuff, just lied on him. So a few moments later, someone in the neighborhood who was watching the live decides that he's going to be the knight in shining armor and defend this girl's honor, and comes up surprisingly to the gentleman, who all he was doing was standing in between them, and shoots him in the chest, and later on he died. And it got me, thinking again, like how we find ourselves in these situations where if everybody would have just calmed down and thought about what was going on, that some of these incidences could be avoided. And stuff like this happens all the time. And matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can find it too. The nigga moment from the Boondocks, because I think that is a perfect analogy of what we see, a lot in our community. And people don't seem to understand the nature of and the gift of being able to think logically before moving in a certain direction. And so for the people who are on the Facebook and YouTube, I'm gonna share the clip and play it. And let me see. So hopefully it should play, and y'all let me know if it does or not.
Watch where you walking, nigga. Hey, what you say, nigga?
Watch closely. You're about to experience a nigga moment. What's the literature defines the nigger moment as a moment when ignorance overwhelms the mind of an otherwise logical Negro man.
What did you say, bitch nigga? Hey, squeeze it, nigga.
Causing him to act in an illogical, self-destructive manner, i.e., like a nigger. Nigger moments are unpredictable.
Hey, wait, man, wait. This is stupid. Hey, you right, dog. Look, let's put the guns away and go on about our business. Freeze!
But they all end up bad. If they had their own category, nigger moments would be the third leading killer of black men behind pork chops and FEMA. It's a fact. Now let's see how a nigger moment affects a white man.
Watch where you walking, bitch.
What did you? Wait a minute.
I'm white. Where you going? Don't you ignore me? This is a perfectly good moment to throw your life away.
This is a classic Boondocks episode. And so for those of you who couldn't see it, you know, the incident was somebody bumped into each other, and instead of saying, you know, excuse me, I'm sorry, something to that nature, instead they escalated the situation, and these two brothers in the cartoon start shooting at each other, and of course missing, because rarely do they hit the target. But it was something interesting in that, which a lot of people didn't catch, is that although they missed each other shooting, at the end the cops comes and shoots them dead. Now, although the Boondocks says that the nigger moments are, you know, are associated with males, there are nigger moments with females. And, you know, a lot of people will, you know, try to attack me for this. And some of y'all already know my feelings about the Ma'Khia Bryant situation. But the Ma'Khia Bryant situation is a perfect example of a nigger moment, when we let our emotions take the best of us. So, you know, when the story first reported, it was alleged that there was a group of females who came to the house wanting to jump her. Well, we come to find out that that is not the case. The young ladies who were there were already there. They were the daughters of and former children of the woman who owned the house, who was the foster parent. It was her birthday that either that week or that day. So they were there to celebrate the mother of the house birthday. So this tells you a lot about the character, because I know a lot of people wanted to say, you know, well, we need to investigate the foster parents. Well, this tells you, you know, to the degree of the respect that these girls had for the mother, that even the former foster children were coming to visit to celebrate this woman's life. So they're there to celebrate, and the sister, the young sister, Ma'Khia Bryant, I think she'd been there maybe 3 months or so, if I get, you know, that part right. And, you know, one of the older sisters was telling her that she needs to clean her room. And so that, you know, because basically Big Mama does not like a messy home. So Ma'Khia gets into, you know, she gets upset at the teenage or older woman telling her what to do, or suggesting that she needs to clean her space that she is living in. And so, you know, a lot of us have dealt with this to where, you know, somebody believes that you can't tell them what to do. And that's exactly what happened here, is that she, you know, told him that you're not my guardian, you can't tell me what to do, and yada, yada, yada. And so, stuff escalates at that, moment. So next thing you know, they're downstairs and they're yelling at each other and all this other kind of stuff. Nobody has thrown hands yet. And so it got to the point to where the sister had to call the police. So the girl that you hear on the phone is not Ma'Khia Bryant calling the police. It is her sister calling the police. And so they're still outside. They're not fighting yet, but they're yelling according to a lot of the witnesses and things. And so now we see the videotape, of course, of the police officer, coming up to the scene. And so when you see the video cam of the police officer coming up to the scene, you see that he's walking towards the young lady who's holding a small dog in the pink. So she's holding the dog and about to, tell the officer what is going on. And then that's when Ma'Khia comes around the car and says, I'm gonna stab you the fuck up, bitch, and charges that other sister, who fell that you see in the video. So, the officer sees the knife in the hand. Remember that the call came in that there's some girls outside with a knife. So he don't know who's who at this point. So now he sees the knife and he's charging and trying to stab up the first girl. She misses because she stumbles and I think trips over the girl who fell. And so that's when you see the father come and kick the young girl in the back of the head. And so after she initially stumbles, she goes and charges the girl in the pink. And then she's right here with the swing. And then that's when the shots, ring off. And so people can debate whether, they should have tried to tackle her and tase her and all of this other kind of stuff. We can get into that debate. Here, a young girl's life was lost because she got into her feelings about someone telling her to clean her room. In the other situation that I mentioned, saying previously, listening to the young girl lie on the man who was trying to break up the fight, somebody feels that he's going to be the Superman and come and save the other girl's honor, goes and shoots and kills, another brother, a father of three, Army veteran. I want to say he was in the Marines. And there was another situation that just happened recently to where, this guy is dating this woman, and she has a child by some previous dude. And you know how it is. Baby mamas and baby daddies, fathers and mothers, they often don't get along if they're not in the relationship. So obviously there's some back and forth going on there. So now this guy feels that he needs to save the honor of this sister. They're recording live, goes to the brother's house. I think this is in Texas as well. Goes to the brother's house and starts arguing with the dude at his house, and then shoots him at his door while he's at the door when he opened the door. And so in each of these situations, again, I just sit back and like, why don't people think critically, and how do we get to the point where our emotions, get the best of us like this? And so, a lot of our people are in jail because they can't control their emotions. And so, that's, these few examples that I'm giving are on the extreme, in terms of the violent side. Then you can get into like just interpersonal relationships, and people aren't sensitive to other people's needs and the way that they express themselves. And you see these, how should I say? You'll often hear like a lot of people thinking that that feelings are something separated from your thought and thinking and logic and things of this nature. And this is what I want to address here in the context of, our interpersonal relationships, as well as our, relationships with other human beings who we may not know. And so when I navigate these conscious community spaces, you'll see a lot of conflicts of people who don't like to think and rationalize and be all up in their feelings and things of this nature. And we get these traumatic situations that could be avoided if people would just calm down and think rationally. And so I wanted to, discuss and to see, where y'all headspace is at, and what y'all feel. What are some situations? What are some solutions that y'all think would help in this in these types of situations? And again, for those of you who are on the YouTube and the Facebook spaces, I'm going to put the link, in the chat room to join the panel if you want to do that. And we should be good there. And you don't have to show your face or whatnot. If you just want to converse, you can do that. And so I want to, get y'all opinions and things. And so people think, like, I wrote about this a while back in my book, Where is the Love? How Language Can Reorient Us Back to Love's Purpose. And, I had to dedicate a whole chapter to this notion of feelings and emotions and the alleged dichotomy between logic. Because what I find in a lot of discussions, and it's not to put sisters out there, but it's primarily with sisters who believe that there's some kind of dichotomy, so to speak, and opposition between logic and feelings. And we tend to use the word feelings in the wrong context in these discussions, not understanding that your feelings are your thoughts and that your emotions are your bodily expressions. How your body responds. And so what people don't understand is that there's a process in which you witness or experience some kind of phenomenon. Your body, your brain automatically sends signals to the body to have it respond, because your emotions are evolutions or are an evolutionary tool or development that helps for your survival. So, for example, when we talk about certain emotions, we could talk about fear, anxiety, love, whatever. The physical emotions are that which propel you to act immediately. So, for example, if you were to see a bear, right, charging at you, the immediate emotion of fear overtakes the body, and then the body starts pumping, different types of, we'll call it juices and enzymes for the moment to help to propel you to get the F out of the way for your survival. Like if there's fear, like if you're on the edge of a cliff, you'll feel fear because it's trying to tell you to stop and go in the opposite direction, or you're going to fall off. Now, people think that feelings and emotions are the same, and they're not. You can argue that they're two sides of the same coin, but they're not the same. And so again, your emotions are your bodily response. So when you feel the shakes, when you feel the jitters, you feel that knot in your stomach, when your heart rate starts pumping really fast, or you start to sweat in things, you know, your emotions can be in your face. So when you smile, and you know, you can tell a fake smile from a real smile, because fake smiles, people smile with their mouths only. When people genuinely smile, you'll see the crinkles, the wrinkles in their eyes, because they work in conjunction. You can tell when someone's sad or when someone's angry, you know, by the bodily postures and things of that nature. So when, you know, those are your emotions, they're physical things and they're physical expressions in your body, and they're very short-lived. However, your feelings are your thoughts, the way that you interpret your emotions or the situation which has caused you and your body to react in a certain way. It is your rationale for what is going on. And so this is where your feelings in things can become problematic, because your feelings, although they are thoughts, they aren't necessarily critical thoughts, meaning that you didn't take a good assessment of the situation, and you're putting everything into its logical order to make sense of something. Your feelings are heavily biased, because your feelings are shaped by your culture, your personal experiences, your beliefs, and your values. So how you feel about a situation, what you think about something, depends on your upbringing, your environment, your socioeconomic status, your willingness or unwillingness to be critical in situations, your ability to research and discover, information, all of this plays a part in how you feel. And so I would often get into these heated discussions, especially in the Afrocentric community, more so the Afrocentric spiritual community, because they have this belief that in order for you to be spiritual, you have to suspend logic. And it is partly on that in which, I wrote that segment in the book, and to show that, there's this distinction that we have to keep in mind when we're having these conversations. And so this is going to be, so when, how you interpret, for example, the Ma'Khia Bryant situation is going to depend on all of those factors. What has been your personal experience up to this point? What are your beliefs? What is your religious and spirit? What did that tell you in terms of what to value and how to react and respond to certain things? And so an example that I give in the book, which was published in 2015, is that, if I see a Confederate flag as an African-American man, born and primarily raised in the South, right? When I look at that flag, it elicits certain types of emotions, and one of disgust, of anger, of a variety of different things. I don't get depressed over it, but I have a negative connotation when I see a Confederate flag. Distrust, all of that. comes into play. And so when someone of European heritage who's from the South, who has a certain mindset, sees a Confederate flag, they may respond totally different. They may have feelings of joy, of pride. And, when they see it as a symbol of their heritage, a symbol of something to be proud of in their accomplishments and things of that nature. Now, how can this one symbol elicit two different responses from people that view it? Because our experiences are different. Our values are different, our beliefs. On one hand, there's a group that believes that Black lives matter. And then on the other hand, there's a group that believes that Black lives do not matter. That white lives matter better than more than everyone else's, especially Black lives. And this symbol represents those who stood up to tyranny, equality, who stood up to what they considered tyranny and fought the good fight for the white South. Again, they feel a certain type of way. That's why they, get angry and protest when these Negroes and Latinos and Native Americans and whatnot and allied white folks come together to try to get these monuments taken down. So they have a whole new set of emotions because now to them, you're disrespecting them, their family, and their heritage. And so we got to understand this relationship to feelings. And so I think I'm going to, I don't have a slideshow prepared, but I do have a PDF of my book. So what I'm going to do for those of you who are on Facebook and on YouTube, I'm going to share some excerpts from the chapter and the citations that I have here. And so this is from Where is the Love, published in 2015. And so those of you who are on Instagram, y'all just going to have to kind of listen. And so I won't be able to see any of your comments who are on Facebook and YouTube. But nonetheless, I will, cite some things here. And so let me see. And one thing I got to make a distinction here is that, in the West, when we want to signify or create a symbol for emotions, we point to the heart. However, in a lot of African cultural groups and in their language, the word for thoughts and thinking and the word for heart and spirit are the same. And so when you speak in this vein from many different African perspectives, you have to say the heart mind, like they're intertwined. So they believe that their thoughts originate here instead of here. And so that's a whole conversation in itself. So amongst the Bakongo people and Baluba people, for example, in Central Africa, it is Moyo or Moyo. And I believe it's the same for the Amazulu in South Africa. It's a word for mind and heart. And in the ancient Egyptian language, it is the id. It's the heart, mind, heart. And so that's a discussion, worthy of discourse in the near future. So what I want to read here is just something from Dr. Amos Wilson in terms of the nature. So I made sure that I cited a number of psychologists on this question to demonstrate that the research shows that, your feelings are your thoughts, and your emotions are the body's response to stimuli. They're different things. And then we'll get into why that distinction is very important, and then link it back to the conversations that we were having at the beginning of this particular program. So this is from Blueprint for Black Power, page 89. And Dr. Amos Wilson, when he's talking about, thought and consciousness, he says that consciousness, that it is an instrument of behavioral control. Through its states and levels, humans control their mental, physical, and emotional behavior. And so he's setting us up here. And he continues, actually, we go back to page 86, before he gets there. So when we're talking about consciousness, and we're talking about a state of mind, and which includes degrees of awareness, in which, depending on this particular organization and condition, both facilitates, sets limits on the ability of the individual to engage in various type of mental and behavioral activities. So Dr. Wilson goes on to say, and he makes a distinction between wakeful consciousness and unconsciousness. So hopefully those of y'all who are on Facebook can see this clearly. So I apologize if it comes off small, but Dr. Wilson says, wakeful consciousness is an active, goal-oriented, all-inclusive psychological state of being. It includes the operational influence of conscious and unconscious processes, as well as behavioral repertoire and possibilities which can influence the mental and physical behavior of the conscious individual. It encompasses and is largely characterized by the fairly consistent ways the individual tends to perceive, interpret, respond to, and behave towards stimuli based on past and current experience, prior conditioning, perceived knowledge, values, and intentions. These factors interact and coalesce to organize consciousness as an attitude, as a general ongoing predisposition to behave in certain ways based on operationally available information, experience, abilities, skills, needs, values, and expectations, on a characteristic worldview and perception of the self. And so if it seems like I said a lot, hopefully we can break it down here. So what he's reaffirming here is that your experience, the way that you respond to stimuli emotionally, for example, is predicated on a variety of different variables, and which includes your, how you perceive the situation and interpret it, your past experiences, your current experiences, prior conditioning. So the way that your socialization process has occurred throughout your life may dictate how you respond to the stimuli that evokes a certain type of reaction and emotion. So if, for example, if you are a person who was initiated and trained to take all types of insults in things, right? Like for those who are in a pledge process, whoever pledged in college, or maybe being in the military and people are yelling at you and you got to focus and continue your task without being distracted. You know, if you have that experience, when somebody says something off the wall, you don't necessarily react in a violent or sad way, because your conditioning to not react so harshly to when people say something negative about you takes over. But if you're an individual who has not had that type of training, who is very sensitive to what people say to them, you may respond violently to something that you perceive is a negative, connotation. So, sorry, I'm getting text messages in the middle of the stream. And so all of this plays a factor. So you got to think about this in terms of, for example, in your intimate relationships. So when you are triggered by certain things and you believe that your feelings are hurt or somebody is doing that, you have to be able to step back and look at your past experiences, your beliefs and values, and to see how that is shaping, how you are perceiving, how you are feeling in the moment. Because, for example, if somebody who loves you gives you criticism, you may perceive that as them being negative towards you, when that may not be the case. But, if any time someone gives you criticism about your behavior or anything to this nature, and you immediately get real defensive and want to be violent and get very emotional and things of this nature, you have to really take assess yourself and take a look back and to see what has led to this assumption that the world is after you because you have been criticized about your behavior. And so this citation that I have here for Dr. Amos Wilson speaks to that. And so let me see here. I want to, just give some more citation. And remember that Dr. Amos Wilson was a psychologist. And so he continues on page 86 when we're talking about, when people say how they feel about something, you're really saying how you think, what you think about something. So your feelings are attached to your way of thinking. And so, as Dr. Wilson says here, to possess consciousness is to be possessed by consciousness. For consciousness takes over, in quotes, and represents itself in the body as feelings, emotions, taste, values, intelligences, and behaviors. When relatively stable or consistent, habitual dispositions and tendencies which dynamically structure and are reciprocally structured by consciousness incline the individual or group to act or react in certain fairly predictable ways. So when we look at the situation with the young 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant, we would have to go back in time all throughout her childhood and to see, what was going on that would make her respond in the way that she is doing or the way that she did, to where when somebody older suggests that she do something, she reacts like just because somebody is older, that they're not their guardian, that their word does not have value and that they can't tell you what to do. Now, I grew up in a time where when someone was older, they had a certain level of respect. And of course, unless they were told you to do something illegal, you respected what the older folks said. It didn't matter if they were your guardian or your dad or whatnot. That was irrelevant. Older folks just had a certain level of respect that was due to them. And so I couldn't, just because, my mother didn't tell me to clean the room, that I shouldn't clean the room. That would not have been a thought back in my day, or at least back in my day and in my household. If an older cousin came by and said something, you respected saying the OG cousin. Some uncles and everybody come by to say, hey, young man, you need to do this, you need to do that. You give them an ear. You give them the benefit of the doubt that they have your best interests at heart. But that doesn't seem to be the case in these days, to where you can't even tell a young person to just tidy up in the house that they're living in, and they want to respond violently. So there's a lot going on there. And so we have to ask, the father was there at the home at the time, well, at least at the time when the police showed up, but it was a foster home. So why didn't the mother and why didn't the father, neither one of them, have custody of the two daughters? That has to be explored. And so, these are the things that we're dealing with here. And so from this book called Psychology, 1991. This is one of my old school books when I was taking psychology. So I keep my books. I didn't sell all my books in college. But he backs up, Dr. Wilson on this notion about, saying your emotions and your feelings and things. So on page 471, Bernstein et al. States, the passionate nature of emotions does not mean that you have no control over them. However, because of their fourth feature, and then I have, in the footnotes, I give the other features that was discussed in the text. Emotions arise in part from a cognitive appraisal of a situation. Seeing a lion elicits different emotions depending on whether you think the animal is a tame pet or a wild, hungry beast. Your interpretation of the situation can alter your emotional reaction to it. Emotions depend not just on the situations, but on what you think about those situations, such as how you interpret their potential for threat or pleasure. So again, we're stressing here that what you feel is based upon what you think and how you're interpreting the situation. And so when two individuals may not feel the same about a situation, they have to be adult enough to be able to have a discussion, a logical discussion about why they either feel or don't feel the same way about a particular topic. But oftentimes we let our emotions cloud our judgments, and we do stuff out of emotion. It doesn't have to be even a negative thing, like in the case of Ma'Khia Bryant. A lot of us enter marriages and relationships based on feelings. I don't know how many brothers have had some good, if you know what I'm talking about, and then thought about marrying a sister, or vice versa. This brother, was able to buy and finesse a sister with this, and now she's, contemplating being with him, and nobody's logically looking at the situation at large. You know, looking into each other's character, looking at, you know, your current state and what would a successful marriage and all of this be? Because something feels good in the moment, I feel this euphoria of quote unquote love. You know, we decided we're going to step into a space in which, you know, is going to be more involved, and where those feelings, those emotions, those vibrations in the body aren't always present. And so a lot of times you go to these and deal with these divorce cases, and it's because this feeling isn't gone. Matter of fact, when Jada Pinkett Smith, you know, was having her red table talk with Will Smith after the entanglement, you know, the famous entanglement issue, when Will Smith essentially asked her why, her response was, you know, I hadn't felt good in a long time. So she steps out of the relationship so she can feel some kind of emotion. And then August Alsina, you know, was all in his feelings, you know, and decides that he wants to out the whole situation, you know, on live stream or TV or whatnot, because, you know, he can't control his emotions. He really thought that Jada Pinkett Smith, you know, who gave him some good, and that she was going to leave her $400 million husband for his upcoming ass. His up and coming R&B ass. No, you were way out of pocket for the whole situation, and even thinking that was going to happen in your favor. And so it's, you know, we got to step back and reassess these different situations here. And what is this that I'm looking at here? There's an article by the name of How Thoughts Affect Feelings. And I'm going to keep stressing this because this is going to be important, you know, in terms of how we deal with each other, even in the so-called conscious community, you know, and how we need to evaluate our relationships and what people say and things of that nature before responding when people get out of pocket. Jerry Waxler says, our thoughts have a profound effect on our emotions. And by learning how to think in our own best interest, we improve our emotional condition. And so that's something where we got to kind of pause and just really let that sink in. You know, by learning how to think in our own best interest, we improve our emotional condition. So if you learn how to think critically and to weigh out and look at the situations in its entirety, you improve how you respond to things, your emotional conditionings. So you can improve your response and your control of your emotions by understanding how to think critically and to think valid thoughts, etc. I continue. We may not realize our thoughts affect our feelings. Most of us assume it's the other way around, that our feelings come first and our thoughts naturally follow. But as we watch the relationship between thoughts and feelings, we begin to recognize that the influence works both ways. For example, our thoughts may habitually emphasize, first and foremost, the discouraging side of every situation, or compulsively predict a catastrophe at the end of every pleasant moment. Such gloomy thinking drags our feelings into dumps. I don't know if y'all have been in relationships with individuals that when they're presented with a situation, their mind automatically goes to the negative, to the most negative extreme about a situation. And I've been in a few of those. And it's hard to relate and to be engaged with individuals like that, because, you know, they're always in a sad mood and perturbed by everything, because their mind immediately goes to the negative spectrum in the world. And even this happens to us collectively. For example, those of you who work in a teaching capacity and who work to liberate African people in whatever way that they can, you often run into a situation where, for example, it's like, we need to build our own schools. You'll get these individuals to say that the white man won't let us build our own schools. You know, they're just going to tear it down and try to take it over. They don't have a victorious consciousness. And that's one of the things that I love about Afrocentricity, not only as a research framework, but also as a living paradigm, is that it mandates that one have a victorious consciousness. Because if you don't believe that you will be victorious in your efforts, you won't put in all the work necessary to achieve your goals. And so this is going to be real important to this next quote here from Ray, and I'm pretty sure it's cited at the end of the text, where we talk about elaborate. He has a section on there called "Elaborate Trap of Habitual Thinking Patterns," and so I'm just going to read this here, and this may be the last part that I actually read, but he says, as we learn more about our thinking patterns, we realize our thoughts can trap us in strong negative emotions. For example, it is common to blame another person's behavior for our own feelings. We might say to ourselves that the other person makes us feel depressed or upsets us. Cognitive therapy helps us reframe our thoughts to realize that the other person doesn't magically control our feelings. We make ourselves depressed through our own beliefs. Again, you're seeing a pattern here, that the way you think conditions your emotions and your feelings. And so you'll find in these types of discussions where somebody upset me or they made me feel this way. That's not necessarily the case. You may have some unresolved triggers from your past and then your frame of thinking to where these people can upset you. Like, I don't get upset like if white people call, us niggers and all this other kind of stuff. Like, you can't emotionally get me roused up by using that terminology, because I know who I am. I know where we come from. And this is something that, it just doesn't affect me. But for some, who are easily triggered by folks like that, they get all in the rage, and then it's a mess. I'm the kind of person that's like, let's think more strategically in how we respond. Give them something to be mad at. You think that we're less than? Fine. Well, watch my less than ass surpass you over here. Now, if you put your hands on me or my family, we have a different problem. I'm a rationally tax that ass if you out of pocket physically. But words, nah, it ain't gonna go down like that. So I'm gonna continue. When we look more closely at our beliefs, about other people, we realize that we often expect them to place us at the center of their world. We learn to think in these magical terms when, as children, we believe we were the center of the universe, and we expect our parents to know our needs and give us what we wanted. These and other childish beliefs persist unchallenged into our adult life, continuing to disturb us until we take the time to root them out and correct them. And this is something that, we have to look at as well, in more so in our interpersonal relationships, is that we expect everyone to make us happy. Nobody can make you happy. You have to be happy for yourself, from your own, life source. And if you're always looking for other people to make you happy, you will always and consistently be in your feelings when somebody doesn't measure up to your expectations. And matter of fact, I love that live that Will Smith had, and this was prior to the whole entanglement incident. And when he was talking about that he had retired, that he had given up trying to make Jada Pinkett happy. And that he came to the realization that you can't make, I will be exhausting myself trying to consistently please you. And so these are the kinds of people that I call emotional bullies and emotional dictators. And so emotional bullies always, try to make you feel guilty for not making them feel a certain way all the time and consistently, when the onus is not on the other person to make them feel happy. It's always on you. And that, they upset you and they did this and this, unless they are verbally abusive to you, are physically abusive to you, are inconsistent, like do some actual damage to you or your finances. Everything else is just normal human frailties or failures, which you got to give people a chance to be able to grow and develop. But if you have this expectation on other human beings, you will consistently be let down, and you'll consistently be in a mood, in a state of depression, and having anxiety, and always hurt, because you don't understand the relationship between your own thoughts, your own beliefs, and your feelings and emotions. So I'll continue. For example, we may have formed the notion that another person is supposed to know what we want and then is supposed to behave accordingly. I'm pretty sure that in any relationship, some of y'all listening have experience where the other person refuses to communicate effectively with you, but expect you to read their minds and to just know what they need at that moment. And that's not the case. And so I'll continue. This belief sets us up to become upset and troubled with the other person. When the other person doesn't behave in the way we expected. By saying the other person upset us, we give all the power to the other person. Upon closer consideration, we realize that we were upset by our own belief about the other person's behavior rather than the behavior itself. When we look at it this way, we can find ways to reclaim control of our feelings. And so what this is expressing here is about, growth. Like it's certain things that, of course, we expect children and teenagers to behave in a certain way, maybe even in your early 20s. But in your late 20s, in your 30s, and your 40s, you're supposed to be at a level of consciousness where you understand the world, where you're not surprised by everything in the world and everything doesn't perturb you. But a lot of us don't grow up. We still have childish mentalities. And this is why these folks are always in their feelings. And so I will, in there. And if I have to jump back in here, there's some more. But it's really just kind of re-emphasizing what I've already stated, concerning the emotions and things of that nature. So I don't know what's going on in the chat. I haven't been keeping up. Peace to everyone new who's come into the chat. But yeah, again, I want to extend the conversation. So this isn't just me. I want to get some feedback from you all concerning the topic at hand. And so, what are your thoughts? What have been your experiences? And so, for me, like, this doesn't only apply again to our interpersonal relationships. This applies to our studies and why, for example, scientists have developed the scientific method and things of this nature the way that it is. Why science is the way that it is. Because, your feelings, how you feel about a subject or what you believe is a reality is not does not get you to truth. You have an inherent bias. And so science requires us to drastically reduce or eliminate our biases as much as possible so that we can get to the truth of things. So you will not be a good scientist. You will not be a good researcher if you're always in your feelings, that you're letting your emotions lead the research. Because if you lead with your feelings and your emotions, then you will miss critical information that will help you discover the truth about what it is that you're researching. Because your beliefs are your biases. You may miss, this happens, of course, in police work. So if you believe that all Black males are inherently violent and will attack you, and you get called, to a situation, and you see a brother there, a big brother who's 6'2", 6'3", or whatnot, standing there, you come and immediately go to him thinking that he's the problem. When the white boy over here with the machine gun is just slowly walking away because you didn't enter the situation objectively. And so there's I have yet to find a situation where somebody was interviewed in jail and was like, I thought about the situation critically and I used logic to guide my actions, and this is how I ended up in prison. No. A large number of folks in prison are there because they emotionally reacted to something and didn't think about the process through. And so this is why critical thinking is important. And you'll hear some folks try to bring up this subject called emotional intelligence. And, me being a linguist, I take words seriously. And, it's interesting. For example, I'm going to share this screen, this word here. So I'm going to share, share screen, emotional intelligence. So hopefully this comes up on your screen. Again, for those of you who are on Instagram, it's not going to show up at all. you would have to watch us on either Facebook on the asarimhotep page or on YouTube. Excuse me. But emotional intelligence essentially is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships wisely. That's what judiciously means, and emphatically. Now, this is a fancy way of saying to be able to think critically first. And remember what was said earlier, that if one was to be able to think critically and to think in one's own best interest critically, that you will condition your emotions. And so this is what essentially emotional intelligence is. So remember that your emotions are a reaction to how you think about something. So you're never going to escape your mind in the process. So this is why we condition our mind, and we do exercises to be able to think critically, because it helps us to keep our emotions in check and to move more judiciously throughout life. And so let me stop sharing the screen here. So let me see if there's any questions in the chat, since no one wants to join the conversation. Let's see. Let me see. I have to, y'all having a pure discussion. Let me see. Really, Pure Black says, if a chick want to deal with me, I need 20% of her paycheck. Yeah, you're on your own on that one, bro. They cutting up here in the chat, so don't take too much of this seriously. Let me see. Yeah, I don't see it. There's just a lot of statements going on, so I don't see any questions here. Peace, brother. OG Gorilla in the building. Peace to Damien. And that's right. It's all about will I come first? So yeah, they having their own discussion. Stephen X says European science lacks spirit. That's not true. You know, the problem is that, you know, we and I've done a whole program on this, on what spirit is. So people don't understand what spirit is. Spirit is just a thought, you know, or it's defined in African cultures primarily in two ways. And I said two, holding up for, in two ways. It's either a thought. The spirit is a kind of thought. It's a consciousness. That's all in one is. Or it is an agent of change. It can be a force of nature. It can be a person. It can be an insect, an animal. It is just an agent of change. That's all a spirit is. And so, but usually they reserve the words in their languages for spirit for something that is hidden. And so when someone says a European science lacks spirit, no, it's full of spirit. Spirit is a neutral entity. You see, it also wants to ignore cosmos, earth, people, and nature are connected. That's not a reality. Matter of fact, you'll hear Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about that all the time. You know, how everything is interconnected, you know, in this universe. And so, of course, on the world stage, the Africans were the first to really express that notion. But, you know, Europeans in science, in their religions, Asians in their religious, you know, traditions, well, more so like Southeast Asian, like India, Buddha, and all that other kind of stuff. and also in the Native American traditions, besides the African traditions, have all had that. We keep equating the thought processes from the Abrahamic traditions and applying that to a large group of people. They've adopted a Abrahamic paradigm over time. Remember, Abrahamic religions didn't originate in Europe. That stuff was brought to them. If you study pre-Christian and pre-Islamic European religions, all of it is nature religions. Anything like what you would see in Africa. And I wish I was back home in Philly, where my library is, and I can show you a couple of books, and you'd be very surprised at the religion that the Europeans believed prior to, the indoctrination of Christianity and thing. Let me see. Emmanuel Adama asks, what challenges did you face on your journey to become stoic, and how do you overcome them? Part of it is just living life. Part of it is just talking to elders. Like I how should I say? I used to hang around old people, and old people, and I'm getting to that. I'm 41 right now, but I'm getting to that stage where I'm becoming an elder. And the older you get, the less you care about what people think and what you say and how you say it. Old people will cuss you out and just tell you how it is. And I'm getting to that point. But I used to hang with old folks. But not only that, for example, my father was a martial arts instructor. And so me taking martial arts as a young person, me being in a lot of rap battles back in the day, and the classic, we used to jive on each other and things of that nature. And then, of course, like pledging in college, like, when you're going through all these different rites where you had to physically go through something and endure pain and to overcome and triumph over adversity, this is what helps to harden your mind to the trivialness of the world, and to not get scared and be upset and at every little thing that is being tossed to you. So everyone has to learn Invictus. The poem by William Ernest Henley. And so those in fraternal organizations or Masonic organizations, they may remember it, all the way without fail, like, say, like, out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be from our unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath of tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Everyone in these Greek-led organizations and Masons, they have to learn this. And it doesn't become apparent until you go through that process of initiation. And so initiation is painful. But when you have triumphed over those things over time, you become immune to a lot of the vicissitudes. You don't get upset at the world in the way that other people who haven't gone through that hardship before. Like I've been homeless. before, saying on the street. And, I've lost cars, repossessed, of course, kicked out of the home. When I was younger, I used to fight in the hood, been in the middle of a number of shootouts and all this other kind of stuff. It's just been through a lot. And so when I hear and look at a lot of situations, it just doesn't faze me. And I'm like, that's it, that's all, and so, I'm not saying that any of y'all need to be homeless or kicked out on the street to get a certain mindset, but you're going to have to put yourself in situations to where you are uncomfortable, and you're going to have to face your demons, face your fears. That's why I love David Goggins a lot. He's on the extreme of things, but if you kind of listen closely, like, he has that message. Like, he gives you certain strategies to learn how to train yourself. And so a lot of folks will be like, I wouldn't pledge no Greek organ. Ain't nobody hitting me. They don't understand the process of pledging and the importance of having to overcome something physically and how that translates into a mental toughness and a mental clarity and the ability to control your emotions. And so I don't even know if I answered your question. Aaron Edwards asked, how do you think we're responding to police brutality emotionally? I think that we are responding. Yes, I do believe that we are responding emotionally a lot to police brutality. Now, I'm the kind of person that before I come out publicly and I give my opinion on a situation, I take a step back and I wait for all the evidence. Because sometimes, while the police are, usually in the wrong when it comes to brutality and deaths when it comes to our community, every now and then, that may not be the case. And I have to be, as a truth seeker, as a scholar and scientist, my first obligation is to the truth and not people's opinions and not their emotions. I have to be able to look at a situation from all angles and to assess, was a particular action just or not? And this is a very African thing. When you read the ancient Egyptian texts, they always talk about them being good judges, that they judge based on ma'at, that it didn't matter if it was a family member or somebody who was rich. I judged the rich the same way that I judged the poor. When you in the Ifa tradition, when you call upon Shango to judge, you call upon Shango because he's impartial. He don't care about your feelings or your position or whatnot. And so I try to approach every single situation from that standpoint. Now, how we react emotionally is that, the first thing that we do is that we want to go into the streets and protest. And while it has netted us some successes in the past, the police expect it now. So they ask the government for riot gear, for super tanks, and all of this in preparation for any kind of case for which African Americans may respond, in the way that we do. And so we need to have a different approach to handling, police brutality. Because obviously it's not working. So after the Chauvin case and the guilty verdict was given, you had like 4 or 5 different cases within the next week of police shootings and brutality. It doesn't change. And so we got to understand, we got to be able to sit back and look at this more clearly. What is going on here? Why is it in the case in the Ma'Khia Bryant case, they released the police footage immediately, but in this other case, I think his name is Andrew something, I forgot his name. They being stingy with the police footage. So we got to understand that you're dealing with different people in different states and cities in different jurisdictions. And so, part of the fight is going to have to be some of us going to school, getting law degrees, studying politics, getting into politics, and getting into the positions where the laws are made. And we're going to have to try to convince, they're going to have to work with folks to convince to get something on a national level, like a protocol that all police in all jurisdictions in the United States have to follow. Because what's happening in a lot of these cases is that, because there's different rules here and there, they can play off of that, and everybody keeps equating all the situations as if they're the same, and you can't do that. And so, if an incident happens, for example, every single time that there's a verdict or whatnot, don't go in the streets, because they have prepared. They call the National Guard, they get the tanks out, they get the dogs. Now imagine that every single time that they did that, they just spent all these hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to counter, us, and we don't even show up in the streets. They've wasted a lot of money. And then once they've done that a couple of times, then we surprise them and go out in the streets and do whatever. I don't know. It's just, the strategy just needs to be different. That's what like Hamas and all of them do. They'll do a ceasefire. They'll go and collect, themselves and get some more resources. Then they come back and attack, the Jews in Palestine and things. So, but also, how we respond emotionally, again, is that we don't wait for the evidence. We just immediately start spreading rumors, like in the Ma'Khia case. We're going around spreading that some girls came to go jump her and she was defending her home and all of this other kind of stuff. Not true at all. Matter of fact, I forgot the name of the case where the young lady was at a hotel party in Chicago, and then she got so high and drunk that she wandered off, and then walked downstairs into the like an abandoned kitchen, and then locked herself in the freezer and then froze to death. Now, when that situation was going on, it was all kind of allegations out there, and a lot of us were believing it, and we were ready to tar and feather some young brothers because somebody just made up out of the ether that these young men were in there raping the girl and then later dumped the body. And so now these brothers' faces were plastered all over the internet, over some stuff that they did not do. But we understand that a black girl was missing, and may have been dead, and we emotionally responded to it. And now we could have gotten some young brothers killed for somebody wanting to retaliate for the young girl, and then come to find out that it's her own. Her death is her own doing. One, for being that young and drinking and getting high in the way that she did, and then for her walking, in the hotel and then locking herself in the freezer. Because of course you don't have all your faculties when you are drunk and high in that fashion. And so think about, for example, the situation with what's that actor's name? The actress. She had what did she do? She blamed a former football player for allegedly sexually harassing her and some friends or some people who allegedly gave her testimony. And then we come to find out that she makes the whole situation up. Amanda Seals. Now, she could have ruined that brother's reputation. And let's just say you have one of them Captain Saver who want to defend the honor of the sister and attempts to end his life. That would be tragic. But this is what I mean by people being in their feelings and letting their emotions get into them instead of critically thinking and waiting for and examining all of the evidence thus far. So let me see. What about scientific racism? That's people's emotions getting in the way of logic and evidence. So scientific racism is a way, is another of people all in their feelings. Because for you to be racist, you have to have a belief system. Like racism is a belief system that expresses itself in certain types of behaviors and actions. So when you realize in real life that a human race does not exist as a biological construct, and that it is purely based on someone's belief system. It's a fairy tale. And so for you to try to use science to justify your racism shows that, you know, you are in your feelings and your emotions, and you're letting that overtake the truth. Is causing you to not see the truth of the factor. So, you know, scientific racism, folks all in their feelings, white folks all in their feelings. So, okay, so you say thought, so a spirit being a disembodied thought, how can that be discussed? I think there's a part 2. As in the sense of nature, are they not disembodied thought? That sense is covered under mythopoetic, which is an African reality, a tribal cultural reality that still exists today. As I stated before, when you examine, matter of fact, in my book, I don't know if you can see it back there, Alluja Volume 2, I discussed this, and is going to be discussed even further in this text here. Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, and ancient Egyptian Ak, an exploratory etymological study. And so you'll get a good understanding of what a god or what a spirit is. When you find these words in these African languages, it refers to either a thought and or some kind of force that is hidden, that is an agent of some kind of change, which is why the words for wind and breath are used for spirit as well, because it's an invisible animating force. So, but a spirit, a god, a nature can be a human being as well. So even in, like, you know, there's a phrase in the Yoruba language where it's translated as, you know, it is human beings who become Orisha. And there's another one, you know, mother is the best Orisha. Like when you're talking about an Orisha, when you're talking about a nature, like, matter of fact, I don't even have, let me see if I can add one real quick. I'm going to add an image so that y'all can see. And I don't even think it's going to show up correctly because it has a transparent background. Well, I'll use this one instead. So let's open that. So hopefully, so y'all know for a fact that one of the names that I suggested for African Americans in our renaming process is called the Ba and Kole, or Ba and Kola. And so, you know, this is our totem. This is my suggestion for renaming. And I define, you know, it's defined, the word Nkole is the root, the Ba is the plural human prefix in Bantu. And this stands for an eminent and powerful people. The Nkole is an eminent or powerful person. And this word Nkole here is cognate with the word Netcher in ancient Egyptian. The word Netcher, the ch is a palatalized K that you see here in the center for Nkole. So Nkole, Netchers are human beings. And so this, when people talk about spirituality, they all in the space and stuff to this nature. It has nothing to do with being in space and some other world. Spirituality has to do with your reality, how you organize resources to solve your problems in the present day. And so I have a whole discussion on that, and maybe we can have another one again, a more public discussion. And we can bring out all the evidence to show this. Spirituality is reality. And anybody saying something different don't know spirituality. And I'm willing to challenge anyone on this notion. Let me say, Africa Brass asks, you practice or subscribe to Ifa, right? Correct. You can probably see my pawn tray in the back where I do my divinations and all of that. So yes, the Isheshe system is what we call it. The Yoruba people is what many of us call Ifa. And so yes, that's that's one of the indigenous systems that I practice. So let me go back up. Let me see. Let me see. So Asar was one of the 5th war boards of Kemet. Google's on this plan. You know, I didn't live in 5th Ward when I lived in Houston. I was from the south side and the west side of the H. Indeed, 111906 and so next Sunday we will have a discussion, and I'm trying to get a few more people to join the panel. We're going to have a discussion about those who belong to a Greek-lettered organization and also practice African spirituality or belong to an indigenous African spiritual tradition. So it's going to be next Sunday around 4 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. So be on the lookout for that. Steven says, sorry. Now you sound like a Prince Hall Mason, like my lodge brother, James Morgan, you had on not too long ago. And then maybe, see, there's commonality between certain things. So I don't know when you made that post and what I said at that moment, but there's commonalities. But you know, it goes back to that, asking that question, you know, how are you able to, like, people who go through initiations? This is why I recommend initiations for people. Especially, like, for example, here on the screen, I have my 10 basic criteria for being an African-centered, high-value man. And, of course, we always start off with good character and integrity. You have to be a person of good character and integrity. But number 2 is also one of the most important. That to be, in my opinion, an African-centered, high-value man, you have to be initiated into the ways and values of one's ancestors. Now, you can interpret that as being initiated in terms of education. For example, you go to the university and you start taking Africana studies courses and things of this nature. It's just an educational process. Or you can go the truly indigenous route, in terms of initiation into the wisdom of one's ancestors. But it's through initiation, and I mean like real initiation, like hard initiation, in which, you know, you have to overcome some challenges that are very difficult, that you develop this sense of self that allows for you not to be perturbed by the word. Matter of fact, I'm going to do a whole program, and I'm going to invite some folks on to discuss the benefits of initiation and why you need to be initiated. And I'm going to see if I can get Professor James Smalls to come on. I think he would be a good person. Someone asks, do you believe in the concept of divine anger? You would have to define what divine anger, you know, is. And it went, who was that? Unc Obio #1 on Instagram. You'll have to define that for me so I can respond appropriately. Our good brother Ifa Tunde Fayemi, who's going to be on the show next Sunday, a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha and of the Isheshe tradition. He says, one cannot exist beyond nature. The supernatural world is the same as the natural world. I understand. I'm trying to get informed. So, but yeah. And notice number 9 on my list of an African-centered high-value man has mastered the art of being able to tower over life's 1001 challenges. I got that phrase from Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu, and he's talking, he wrote a dissertation titled Beyond the Colonial Gaze, Reconstructing African Wisdom Traditions is a subtitle. And so you'll read in that text, you know, this requirement of the elders and the sages and the wise people, that they all have this uncanny ability to when there's a challenge brought to their face or to their door, that they have developed strategies to be able to tower over those challenges. And when you are constantly towering over challenges, that allows for you, again, to develop these weapons. Dr. Kajangu calls these, you know, these weapons of life, which are really just strategies, wisdom pieces that allow for you to navigate and not get hurt by the ups and downs of life itself. And so in order for you to be able to do that, you have to be able to master your emotions, to understand the role of your feelings and how they serve, but how they can also cloud your judgment, and how you're going to have to take a step back beyond your biases, beyond your experience, your personal experience, to try to understand the larger picture and to be able to move accordingly. And so that's a text. And for anybody who wants it, I have it's his PhD dissertation. I'll give you his PhD dissertation. You know, just hit me up, you know, send me an email or at info@asarimhotep.com. And so this is, no, that's my web address. No, that's the Patreon, and please join the Patreon. But I have to put in my email address. No, it's on here. info@asarimhotep.com, you know, at the bottom. So let me go back here and take that off. And so, okay, so Uncobia further asked, as in, we have a right to be angry at injustice. Yes, you have a right to be angry. But you also have to think strategically when you're trying to tackle it. This is where wisdom comes in. So when you're looking and you read all the African initiatory text, all the texts talk about settling a question or settling an injustice wisely. Because if you don't approach it with wisdom, you will make the mistake of doing something that can jeopardize the overall goal and mission. So you always have to take an honest assessment of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and what needs to be done so that you can take care of the injustice. So, for example, the I don't know if you were around at the beginning of the conversation, but I gave an example of a recent case that happened here in Texas, where a young woman who has a child with this other brother, they're getting into conflict, which is normal, or which happens often, I should say, between two parents who are not together, but who are trying to raise a child or children together. And so this one brother, who the sister is now or was now dating, decides that he wants to step into their business and to defend his honor, or to defend her honor. He goes to the child's father's house, has a group with him that are live streaming the event, and this brother gets into an argument with the man at his own house and then shoots the man at the door. So now let's take an assessment of this situation. You have a woman and a brother that are dating, who believe that the woman has been violated in some way, for an argument or whatever the case may be. So this brother, in his, if I want to use the word divine anger, based on your testimony, then we look at, he takes this divine anger and he goes to the child's father's house and kills him. So now what situation did he create? So you have the father of the child dead. You have now him going to go to jail for life. You have a child now who doesn't have a father. And then you have the mother who is responsible because of being in her feelings and emotions, sending a brother. I don't know. Let me back up, because I don't know if she sent her boyfriend or if he went on his own. But it's in her honor that the brother went to go kill the father. So now she's in a pickle, because now she's caught up in the middle of someone dying because she couldn't settle her differences with her child's father. So now dude's going to jail for life. That's, they never seem to have a situation of injustice in, when it comes to black folks killing folks. So he gonna get caught, and he going to jail, and he's going to jail for life. So when he goes to jail, the woman, if she's still out, and if she don't have to serve no time, what is she going to do? She's going to get her another boyfriend, going to be, sexing up, living her life while you in jail rotting. And for what? If y'all have a disagreement, if y'all can't get along, get an arbitrator, get the courts involved. There's ways that you can handle it. And so I'm just giving that example as, to play to the, this divine injustice. So if, for example, if we want to attack the system because of police brutality, if you try to, let's say we all pick up guns and then we go, saying shoot up all the police. Let's just say somebody suggests that as a solution. What kind of problems would that provide the African-American community who lives here behind enemy lines? Because you don't manufacture weapons. You would have to go to the white man to even get your weapons to go kill the police. the police have many allies. So before when you're dealing with the police, you have the police, then you have the SWAT team, then you have the Rangers, who are stationed across the state. Then you have the National Guard. Then you have the Army. Then you have the Air Force. Then you have the Special Forces teams. So you're talking about Green Berets. You're talking about Navy SEALs. You're talking about Rangers, et cetera, et cetera. So not only do you have to deal with those folks, let's just say that we were able to defeat all of them by some miracle. Shango came out of the sky and laid down the hammer and everything disappeared. So you still got to deal with their allies. So you got to deal with France. You got to deal with the British. You got to deal with Spain, etc., who have treaties to when something like this happens, they can come in and intervene on the half of the United States. So that's not including just the ordinary militia groups. So we have to think differently given the circumstances that we are in the United States when trying to approach a situation. So you can have divine anger all you want, but you don't want to lead and do any actions based on it. You want to think it out and be more strategic, cripple them in a different way, that it guarantees the survival of your offspring to reap the benefits of the work and the sacrifice that you're doing. What good is it if all of you are dead and you don't have seeds to perpetuate the race because somebody didn't think the strategy through? So let me go back to the comments up here. Let me see. It says, question, you mentioned the Kemet proverb about an old lady on the grindstone. Does that have to do with this lecture? If so, you can elaborate. No. That doesn't necessarily have to do with that lecture. So you're talking about my Facebook post. And that was more so in regards to Kevin Samuels. And so, of course, nobody ever agrees with everything everybody says. So, we don't have to put that qualifier out there every single time. But there are a lot of people in the Afrocentric movement who have an issue with Kevin Samuels because they believe in their heart of hearts that, we should just totally cancel him and that he doesn't have anything of value to say or to provide the African American world community as a whole. And so what I was saying I was using that proverb because I'm like, or using that, it wasn't a proverb, it was an actual text from the wisdom of Ptah-hotep, where he talks about that wisdom can be found with the woman at the grindstone and saying that, don't be arrogant with your knowledge. And so a lot of us, we learn a lot and then we think that we are above people who don't have the same attitudes and the same beliefs that we do. And so, and with that, because Kevin Samuels is not African centered by how we define African centered and things of this nature, we should just totally dismiss what he says and not understanding that, he's just a source. He's just a messenger. Listen to the message. Forget how the frame is. Can you understand the message? And this is what I mean by I guess you can link that conversation to this. That wasn't the focus, but that would be a good example of someone being in their feelings. Because in their belief, their experience, wisdom doesn't come from people who are not African centered. And that's just a bad attitude to have. Let me see. Yeah, I used to fight like people, and I'm the oldest of I have 4 brothers. So I'm the oldest of 5. So, when you're the oldest in the hood, you got to set the precedence, for the family. Like, if so-and-so has, trying to deal with the young brothers, they know they're going to have to deal with the older brother. So, you had to set it right in the hood. I didn't fight that much, but when I did, it was, it just had to be done. That's just hood life. Let me see. Hoppy Film asks, is there space for feelings? Of course there is space for feelings. That is your way of, that's why I say the title of this conversation are Feelings of Good Servants, but Poor Masters. So we're not talking about feelings do not have a place in our life. It's an evolutionary response. What we're saying is that, or at least what I'm saying, is that your feelings should not dictate how you behave in the direction you're going. That is going to require some critical thought and logic, because our feelings oftentimes forces us to make decisions that we will later regret, whether the feelings are a good feeling or a bad feeling. And so I was just giving examples of bad feelings in terms of anger and disappointment, and how in this extreme, people are going to jail. But let's take it on when feelings are good. Like, I'll give it a perfect example. So a lot of y'all may not know, I have a 16-year-old son, right? And when me and my son's mother were in college, we were having unprotected sex, right? And, I'm in my feelings. It is feeling good. I decide not to pull out. And there are a lot of fellas that this is the case. You just like, you know what? I'm just going to take the risk. And but shortly, of course, the rest is history. I have a son on the way. And so it doesn't have to feel bad for you to be leading with your emotions and your feelings. It's feeling good while I'm in the good, as we call it. But there were some consequences that I had to deal with, of course, after that. Should, of course, and so we were still in college then. So should have been using protection, of course, wasn't ready to have a child, and all of this other kind of stuff. So being in your feelings, doing what feels good to you without thinking something through, could still have Devin. Now, of course, my son is a blessing and a gift to the world. But at the same time, if it was thought out, I would have done it in the context of a marriage, in the context of more financial and economic stability for the child, et cetera, et cetera. But that wasn't the case. And so, so feelings, when it comes times to making moves and decision making, your feelings are just a temperature guide. They let you know what's going on in the outside and how it's making you react and respond. But when it's time to move forward and make a decision on something, it needs to be calculated. It needs to be logical. So let me continue. Let me see. So, let me see. Aaron Edwards asks, can feelings be considered a unit of measurement? I don't know. I don't know if anybody tries to quantify feelings. Because again, feelings are thoughts. They're not vibrations. Those are emotions. Those vibrations and bodily reactions to stimuli in the world, those are emotions. Feelings are thoughts. They're your interpretation of the world and a particular event, and it expresses itself through the body in what we call emotions. So emotions don't come out of nowhere. Emotions are the reaction or reactionary to stimuli, and it comes through the mind. And so I don't know if you were here earlier for the discussion, but we kind of read some literature on that. He says feelings gauge the environment and logic dictates the steps to address the issues in the environment effectively. I like that. And that's from our sister Al-Kabilan Mind. And make sure y'all visit her channel and like her videos and subscribe to her channel and all that good stuff. Holding it down on the West Coast. And speaking of liking videos and things of that nature, make sure that you I done messed up the whole video because I still have the thing up there. But anyway, like and subscribe to the channel and this video, and share it with your friends and keep the conversation going. Let me see what's going on over here. He said, decent. Can it feel good while and after thinking about it? Yeah, I mean, you set up the context. I don't know what you're talking about, but it depends. Crack feels good to some people, but it destroys the body, it destroys the community and everything else. Let me say, his message would ultimately be detrimental because he's saying it's leading to what he wants, the money game. I don't know what y'all talking about. It says, Asar was a player back in the day. I will not confirm or deny any of these allegations. He says, so should we listen to Steve Harvey? Are we being in our feelings saying to cancel him? You can listen to Steve Harvey. I think he makes good points. I don't agree with everything he says, but you never agree with anybody. If everybody agreed with what I said, I'd be one, rich, and two, would be a testament to my genius. But as y'all know, as much controversy surrounds me on these internet streets, that there's a whole bunch of folks who just don't agree with me, no matter how much evidence or anything that I say and bring out. It is what it is. So with Steve Harvey, you got to do with Steve Harvey like you do everyone else. You eat the meat and you throw away the bones. That's just what you got to do. And so what my thing is that we got to stop expecting a certain package for the message. So you can learn from Farrakhan, for example. Even though, he believes that having nappy hair and big lips and a big nose is a curse from Allah, because we were wayward. So I can objectively judge that statement from Farrakhan and say he on that bullshit. And then in another instance where Farrakhan is saying something different about injustice or us getting together and us controlling our economics and things of that nature, I can agree with him all in the same day. And so it's the same thing with Steve Harvey, with Kevin Samuels, with anybody. That's just how you got to do it. So what you have to do as an individual is to develop your sense of critique and logic so that you can honestly assess, no matter who the messenger is, every single message and move accordingly. Let me see. That's an intelligent question. Really not around. Let me see. I don't know. Let me see. He says, we generally do agree with you. You deserve a platform more than Steve Harvey. I don't take anything away from that, brother. Because, I look at his life as well and what he had to go through and endure. And as a person who's been homeless before and had to live out of his car and be cold and all of this stuff in pursuit of your dreams and stuff, there's nothing you're going to tell that man. That man been shot before, all kind of, it was a shot of stab. It's like, he's been through hell. And so what he presents to the public is based on his experience. So I can't knock his experience. That's what the ancestors, had in store for him. That's what the divine had in store for him to accomplish a specific purpose. And so again, I adhere to the Isheshe Ifa tradition. And so amongst the Yoruba people and a lot of people in West Africa, the belief is that you are a spirit that came to earth with certain gifts that you are charged with sharing with the community to enhance community life. But you are going to have to go through some struggles to develop those gifts within you. And so if let's assume, for the sake of argument, that what the Yoruba believe is reality and true, and it's going to apply to you whether you are African centered or not. So if Steve Harvey went through his life the way that it did, because it allowed him to reach the plateau where he is able to do what he came here to do. So you may not think that he's funny, that you don't like his hairline from back in the day, or whatever his attitude, but he's been able to put people on and put people in positions to do stuff. He hires Black folks, and people are able to live and feed their family and bring up the next generation of leaders and things in their community, all because of who he is, his personality, and his experiences. So what we have to do as African-centered men and women is to harness our experiences, and let's shoot for these big things so that we can do big things for people who are more like us in mind and culture and things of that nature. And so he's doing it for Christian folks, and a lot of that's what they do. And so we have to start thinking differently. So Egyptians being Black is not good enough. So the hell what? What about, are you looking at the Egyptians and becoming scientists? Are you becoming engineers? Are you becoming astrophysicists, et cetera, et cetera? And how are you using that information to win a victory for African people? That's all it boils down to. What are you using your information, your platform, your resources, your experiences in life to win a victory for African people? So I'm going to take, this is the last question from Josiah X, and then I'm going to end the program because it's already been 2 hours. He says, when it comes to the Greek names for the types of males, alpha, sigma, beta, omega, do you know the African origin of these types? Yes, and I may invite my brother Sanjetti back on the show, and we'll probably do a show on the African origins of the Phoenician and Greek script. And so, for example, the word alpha comes from a word cognate with Egyptian khelef, which is a word for cows or a bull's head. And so what you see as the A, if I can make a, whatever, the A is just an upside down bull's and cow's head with the horns. And so they've traced all of these letters and things to the Egyptian script itself. And so even like Jean-Claude Mboli right now is working on a text dealing with Semitic and Indo-European based off of his 2010 work, Origine de l'Afrique and Langues, Origin of African Languages. It's going to come out that, all of these concepts are coming out of Africa. So you find these African words, all over Indo-European and the Semitic languages. And so, again, people are you know, we say alpha, sigma, beta, and stuff because that's what the framework in which we find ourselves in here. And you know, but if you want to find the equivalent to Africa, that's all I do. That's all I write. All my books is finding the cognizant African equivalents to some of these things. So that's why, like, when I talk about, for example, a high value man, you know, Africa has all types of words and labels for this type of individual. And so in the Congo, they call this person an Nganga. Amongst the Baluba people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, they call them Nkole. And so that's what you see when I renamed African Americans. Nkole, high value people. The word value means power and strength. To that which has power, that's what has strength. To strengthen. Something that has great value has great power for exchange and change in a society. And so we have terms for that. So the Bai and Kole are the high value people, the eminent and powerful people. That's what I renamed African Americans. And so this word Nkole in Chiluba is a word for someone who is eminent and powerful. In amongst the Bakongo people, it's an Nganga, which comes from a word which means to do, to act. And so an Nganga is someone with the power to do and to act. It's the same thing with Nkole. That's what the word power means. Power and energy is the ability to act, the ability to do, to cause change. That's all power is. And so when you're talking about someone of high value, you're talking about someone of high power. So it's being able to translate these things into African languages and start using the equivalents, you know, the native terms from these African languages. And so that you can, you know, for those of us who are in that mindset, you know, a lot of people aren't African centered in the United States, so they'll continue to use high value man. But we can use Nkole, we can use Ngole, we can use Nganga, for example, Nature. You know, like when a lot of us are talking about Ashe, Ashe is a word for power. It's a word for command. It's a word for value, document. You know, but the A is a nominal prefix. The word she is the word meaning to do, to act. So when you talk about Ashe, you're talking about the power, the ability to act, to make change. And so the tradition of which a lot of us mistakenly call Ifa is called Isheshe. It's about doing the work, the ability to do. It's the science of doing. It's the science of creating and making change. And so with that said, let me see. How so I rock out with these connections and the legend and make it. Appreciate it. With that said, I am going to end this live. And so if y'all haven't found me on the other platforms, of course, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. And thank all of you who are on Instagram who was rocking with me for the first time. And of course, Facebook and YouTube. And so, you know, hit me up at info@asarimhotep.com if you want a copy of Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu's PhD dissertation, Beyond the Colonial Gaze. I know y'all, for those who have my book, you have seen me cite that, you know, on numerous occasions. It's going to change your life. It's going to change your perspective. Someone asked, am I saving the live? I believe so. I don't know if the live automatically saves on Instagram. So this is my first Instagram live. So I don't know how this happens, but it's definitely going to be saved on YouTube and on Facebook. So I'm streaming through StreamYard for YouTube and Facebook. And so this conversation, you know, if it doesn't show up here on my Instagram, you can go to my YouTube page and just search asarimhotep, and you'll find it as the latest one. And so make sure y'all subscribe when you can as well. So with that being said, I am out. I'm going to go find something to eat. Peace.